Well, well, ladies and gentlemen, we're waiting for our host, Sasha, and my co-host, Ivan Kucherenko. And let's see, where are these gentlemen? Otherwise it's going to be a very lonely show. Come on, folks. Let's go. What? Oh, Sasha says his link does not work. My goodness. This is mildly annoying, but not totally unexpected. Here we go. There's Yvonne. Hello, Yvonne. Now that this time the shoe is on the other foot. we are
Yeah,
waiting,
hello, Jonathan.
we are waiting for our glorious host, Sasha.
Yeah, we can start without him, but
Yeah.
I'm glad to be here today
Yes.
with you.
Oh, thank you. And as I'm noting from the latest developments, President Trump seems to be obviously backtracking on his previous promise to end the war in Ukraine in one day, and the implication seems to be that, based upon the Biden administration rushing out aid to the door to Ukraine and sending military supply reinforcements there, but also General Kellogg and Trump, the signal seems to be that they are preparing to not abandon Ukraine, because the Trump administration does not want to look bad. They do not want to look like losers. They do not want to be tagged with having lost Ukraine to the Russians. They want none of that. They are fully prepared to adapt and reinforce Ukraine and attain a just and equitable peace. And in this case, Putin has indicated that he is not interested in any such thing. He is still irrationally bent upon conquest, a conquest which he can't achieve. He does not have the means for it. His economy is faltering. His logistical system is not up to the task. They have taken exorbitant casualties to this point, and they are not making the decisive gains or breakthroughs that would be necessary in order for him to be able to impose a peace upon Ukraine. And NATO is basically consolidated against Russia. They realize that Russia must be defeated in Ukraine decisively. So this looks like it, at best, my estimate at this point, Ivan, is that the war in Ukraine will end in Ukraine's favor in 2025 with an armistice. But Russia has to be compelled to accept that armistice. And here's Sasha. Okay, sorry, she was on the other foot. I had to play lead host there for a couple minutes.
Technical problems, but resolved. Thank you.
Hello, Sasha. Just Jonathan wanted to add that probably you've seen this analytics as well, that the loss, if Ukraine will lose this war, if it will be persuaded to sign a peace agreement with Russia on unfavorable conditions, or if it will be conquered by Russia in case United States will stop military support, then United States will have to spend $800 billion of additional military budget in order to prepare themselves and their allies for a future war with Russia. And not only with Russia, with China in the Pacific region as well, because it will mean that both China, Russia, Iran probably, they will implement more aggressive politics against United States, against their allies, because they will feel themselves unpunished.
Of course, this situation will create a green light for China to do something about Taiwan and to be much more aggressive than it's been so far. It's trying to restrain itself. But you see, I've heard very interesting commentary just, I think, in the morning today, that all world is following the progress of Trump in the establishing a peace in Ukraine. And the failure to reach that will be only not failure of Ukraine itself, it will be failure of US and Trump's presidency. And therefore, while he's trying to deflect that with talking about taking over Greenland and Canada and Panama Canal and something else, all that together, I'm not even talking about the fantastic nature of all these claims. Even all of them put together will not insulate Trump's presidency from the result of his efforts in Ukraine, especially when he was so vocal during the election campaign. He could dismiss it all and say, look, it's a war between Ukraine and Russia, and so let the stronger side win, and the losing side lose. But he said that he would resolve this in one day. Now it looks more like 100 days.
Exactly.
So yeah, okay, let's see, 100 days. Reasonable? Yes, it's reasonable. But so far, there are no indication whatsoever from Putin that he would de-escalate, or at least will refrain from escalating the war. There are civilians are being killed every day. There is no days that civilians are not being killed in Ukraine, whereas Zaporozhye or Kharkiv or many other places. So therefore, actually, Trump now announced that he's seeking meeting with Putin, and Putin just replied that he is not in a hurry to have meeting with Trump. So
that leaves President-elect Trump, or not soon to be President Trump, with no option but to raise the cost.
Yeah.
To put that you have to raise the cost to Russia for continuing the war and make it that price a much higher one than simply having an armistice and stopping the fighting. And if the current second Kursk offensive that the Ukrainians are conducting experiences even greater success, this will put even more pressure on Russia, along with the other factors that are coming into play that I mentioned to Ivan just a short while ago. And the fact that what the Russia, when it was the Soviet Union, used to call the correlation of forces, the correlation of forces is steadily moving against Russia. It is moving it's not moving in Russia's favor. So the pressure is increasing for Russia to, as reluctantly as it might want to do so, to accept an armistice, a ceasefire, and cut its losses, which have already been quite substantial. So go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, luckily today, President Biden's administration made a really great step towards cutting Russia's ways to finance this war. They implemented a great package of sanctions over the Russian oil industry. A lot of companies were put into sanctions. More than 100 of so-called Russian dark fleet of tankers, and before that we've seen news that the major Chinese seaport banned Russian dark fleet tankers of unloading their cargo and servicing them. Probably they were afraid of upcoming sanctions and decided to act before they will be actually announced. So unfortunately, it was not made in 2022 after the invasion of Russia, and since that period, they've earned billions of dollars on their blood oil, but hopefully it was made today, and we'll see how the income of Russia will be decreased within the next months, and how they will not be able to pay to their mercenaries, to pay to North Korean soldiers, and to buy weapons from North Korea, because for them it's war about money. They have majority of all their resources of all their weapon supplies now imported from North Korea, from Iran, probably from China as well. And without money, they will not be able to support this war.
I'll tell you, Ivan, I'll tell you how they will pay their mercenaries. They will pay by promissory notes. And that's how
That's
it
a
will.
lot. That's a lot of IOUs,
Yeah, yeah.
and they're counting on not having to be able to repay those IOUs by those mercenaries being killed. So
Well,
it's not what they want.
I hope they're not so naive to take such salaries. But what is really upsetting that every day when Russia is not made to peace, Russia is not stopped there committing atrocities in Ukraine, and I have a recent video for you. It's a video from Al Jazeera channel about the Russian strike on Zaporizhia on January 8th, when 13 people, peaceful people, were killed. More than 120 people were already injured, and when Russia actually shelled the area bombs the district of the Zaporizhia just in time when people were committing from their work, and this is a really great tragedy. But I want you to see this video, so please, Mark,
Great.
play it.
Excellent.
Carnage near the city centre in Zaporizhia. A Russian airstrike close to what's described as industrial infrastructure, a factory of some sort. The impact zone very clearly including a busy public street. Bodies lie where they fell, people strolling into danger at 10 to 4 in the afternoon, just as a shift change at the factory was underway. Volunteers and rescue workers rushed to help the injured. A multi-storey apartment building in flames.
People were leaving from the shift through the main entrance, and that's when the attack came. There were 2 very loud explosions.
Sending condolences to loved ones, President Zelensky described it as Russian terror. He warned the casualty toll could rise.
Це знов демонструє, що насправді
This shows once again what Russia truly seeks. They want only war and only victims. This is why we must not waste a single day. We must put pressure on Moscow. We must force Russia into peace. We must continue doing everything necessary to protect lives and stop deaths. And at the same time, it is crucial to maintain the unity of all our partners, America and Europe, all our partners around the world who are helping us.
Apart from some significant movements on the front line, it's been a relatively quiet period in Ukraine, with the Orthodox Christmas Day falling on Tuesday. The last attack of this kind took place in December. It seems that slight lull may now be over. Jonah Hull, Al Jazeera, Kharkiv.
Very, very.
And you notice that Zelensky is also saying what I was just said a short while ago, is we must stop Russia here. We must force Russia. There's no talk about conversation about sweet talking or gently persuading Russia to make peace. They must be compelled. And the only way to compel them is to inflict such defeats upon them operationally, economically, and diplomatically that they finally realize that there is no point to continuing. And they can make excuses. They can declare victory and go home, which would probably be about what you might expect from them. But there is no real means for Russia to attain its goals other than by being compelled to admit that, okay, we'll be back, maybe.
What's frustrating is that it's already almost 3 years since the beginning of the war. And there are so controversial claims about West, including US ability to help Ukraine, and not just whether it's a willingness or unwillingness to help. It's even the state of existing weapons in the possession of the West, including the United States. So there are some claims that U.S. has thousands of F-16s and 10,000s of Abrams tanks ready to go at any time, and so on. There are some other controversial information that, in fact, all this is being depleted. The right now, West, specifically, as they're talking about this thing, Western Europe, their stock of weapons is being depleted. They simply have nothing to send. And I'm not being an expert in this field. I'm getting so frustrated when there are so controversial information is being unloaded at you and you don't know how to conduct, because if indeed the version of depleted stocks is right, then what we're talking about, how you can resist Russia, even with all your willingness to resist, it's impossible. So maybe that's not true. So maybe there are stocks available. Now, a lot of talks is that the production that has been started, it's all in run until 2027. That's when the contracts are over and there will be no more military production. So even if the production will continue until 2027, it will just provide enough ammunition and weapons to send to Ukraine, and there will be no more ammunition and weapons to defend actually Western countries in case that, God forbid, Putin will unleash attack. So we are living in a fog of war. We don't understand what is the truthful information and where it lies and how to conduct our thinking about the war and its potential development. What do you think, Jonathan?
I was waiting for the grenade. I listened to your long discussion and said, okay, here comes the grenade. All right. What do you think, Jonathan? All right. Well, very good. Well, my immediate take on this is that Russia's military production and capacity to continue offensive operations is decreasing faster than the Western ability to reinforce Ukraine. Western ability by the NATO nations and the United States, their ability is slowly ramping up. They are not in wartime production mode. None of those nations are. They are mobilizing what they have from peacetime, and they're escalating their peacetime production and to a certain step, but they have not gone, none of those nations have gone to what we would call full mobilization. So, and the Trump administration obviously does not intend to go to, say, full mobilization, but they will, I suspect, have their U.S. military industrial complex increase its production to what I would call full peacetime mode, to full replacement mode. And because the United States itself is not threatened by invasion, that's its big advantage. It can act as what I've called the geopolitical balancer. It does not have to intervene necessarily with its own forces and directly confront Russia. They can send their production to Ukraine. They can send their production to NATO nations, and they can continually reinforce and strengthen Ukraine. And by taking the restraints off of Ukraine's ability to strike, which I suspect it also is going to happen increasingly, then this will increase the shift in the correlation of forces against Russia. And I predict that in 2025, any further military advances by Russia will come to a screeching halt, and they will be unable, really, to pursue additional offensive operations against Ukraine. And there still is the possibility, I contend, that Ukraine will be able to mount a major operational counteroffensive that will seal off Crimea and force its surrender. Force the surrender of the Russian occupiers in Crimea, and that is a major, unmistakable operational defeat for Russia. They will not be able to explain it away, and this will be a major, once Crimea is back in Ukrainian hands, then it will be paradoxically, much easier to negotiate and compel the Russians to accept an armistice. They will be hard-pressed even to hold on to their own gains in eastern Ukraine. So I contend that the all the production factors and economic factors are moving against Russia. They are not moving in their favor. So, and they cannot outproduce the United States. I mean, they've shown that much already. They can't even produce as much as the United States, and their economy is simply not geared for it. They're rapidly exhausting their World War II reserves. All those World War II tanks and armored vehicles they've been throwing into the mix and losing them very rapidly because they are not higher quality. They are not capable of engaging in the kind of combat against Western defensive systems as were arguably their first line forces, which they've lost most of. So I would argue that what the United States and its NATO allies need to do is simply be perseverant. They must persevere and reinforce and increase, where possible, their aid to Ukraine and enable Ukraine to take the initiative to let Ukraine choose its own time for launching its counteroffensive, not just in Kursk to expand that bridgehead, so to speak, but also to inflict a potential counterattack against the Crimean Peninsula.
So if it worst case scenario, Russia will move back to Napoleonic wars with horses and wagons type of warfare.
They are being compelled with their infantry attack. They're already at the World War I stage, if you can argue. World War I plus. They have lots of destructive artillery, although that's decreasing too, and they have infantry, but that's decreasing very rapidly. The fact that they have North Korean allies, quote unquote allies, is also a bad sign for Russia because it signals it's reminiscent of what happened during World War II to the Nazis. The Nazis in 1942, after the failed offensive in 1941, the Nazis had Hungarian forces and Italian forces, for God's sake.
And Romanian.
And Romanian.
Odessa was occupied by Romanian forces.
And now Russia has Hungarian as their allies too. Hungary seems that always choosing the side of.
They have bad luck in choosing allies.
Yeah.
And so,
when it was Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Austrians haven't trained Hungarians as they should have. not that much at all. And
so it's the things that are going on right now in the Russian-Ukrainian war are very reminiscent of Russia's failed offensives during World War I. Yeah, they took exorbitant losses during World War I against the Germans. And eventually they had to surrender to Germany, which enabled Germany to shift its forces to the Western Front in 1918.
And after that, Germany had to surrender.
After that, just in time for Germany to surrender. So it's just, it makes you shake your head at the absolute folly of the Russian political and military leadership. They are in too deep. On the one hand, they perceive they're in too deep to quit. They have to keep going, otherwise they face severe political repercussions at home. But if they continue, they are going to exhaust their military manpower to such an extent that once the war ends, they are going to have significant demographic problems, population growth problems. They already have potentially decreasing population, and that problem will worsen as a result of this war. It will not get better. So you just provided very interesting illustration to wisdom of Lenin and Bolsheviks, Russian Revolutionary Party. So if they wouldn't agree to this disastrous peace with Germany, giving them all the territories, including Ukraine, by the way, and so on, yes,
we would just say, okay, so let's continue to fight just for a few more months, and they would be victors of First World War together with U.S., England, France, and many others. So this is what shows you what was the wisdom and what was the absolute lack of understanding of international politics, the war, the place of Russia in the civilized war, and exactly he took Russia out of civilized war for many, many.
Actually, Sasha, that's maybe the idea of Putin. What they're making right now, they're just trying to keep this war and keep their offensive operations as long as possible in order to hoping for some kind of miracle that Ukraine will surrender after another terroristic attack, that people here in Ukraine will go to Kyiv, to Maidan, and say, "Oh, stop this war! We don't want more bombs, more Russian bombs falling on our heads. Just stop this war." All that. President Trump will say, Ukraine, you should stop this war, accept all Russian conditions, otherwise I will cut the military help and economical help, and your economics will be collapse, etc. They are just trying to hang some time and correct the mistake which Russia did in the First World War, when actually their victory was really close, but they've decided to exit this war. But the truth is that there is no miracle in this case, that Ukraine will fight even without support of our Western allies, because Ukrainians understand that this is existential war for them, that we cannot surrender to Russia, we cannot accept Russian requirements of surrender, although their bullshit about so-called denazification, it means that surrendering the Ukrainian sovereignty, becoming a state of Russia, a region of Russia, another Belarus, so-called. And luckily, our Western allies understand that, and they understand that Russia is weak, and they understand that the victory of Russia will means more and more losses for them in future, and those losses, as we've discussed with Jonathan, the recent economical research for United States, they are the specific numbers in $800 billion, which United States would have to invest additionally to the defense budget in order to sustain Russia and China, and in the possible future conflict in case Ukraine will lose in this war. So luckily, this is not the First World War. Unfortunately, in this war, despite the First World War, Russia has bombs, they have long-range missiles, which they can use for terroristic attacks on peaceful Ukrainian cities. But I hope that in future, Russia, after they lost in this war, they will be punished for all their atrocities, and all Russian war criminals will be including Putin, will be persecuted. Hopefully, the meeting of Trump with President Putin will be in some country which accepted that the jurisdiction of international court, and Putin will be just arrested on this meeting and transferred to Hague, to international court, before or after this meeting. It will be really a great meeting for them.
Well, we're living in a very interesting time. On this program, many times we compare this war to First World War. And interestingly enough, before U.S. got involved, both sides were so distracted and so unable to pursue anything at all. So there could have been a peace without actually a peace agreement. There would be a peace simply because no side can continue to fight.
The problem with that, Sasha, is that in the First World War, what they called the Great War,
Yeah.
They called it the war to end all wars. That war was more destructive and more of human life and property than all of the previous wars in human history combined.
Yeah.
Both sides believed fervently that God was on their side. Both sides believed fervently that the other side was completely evil and undeserving of any mercy whatsoever. And this attitude on both sides, combined with a lack of restraint and a lack of willing to hold themselves back, they attacked each other with a ferocity and lack of restraint unprecedented in the history of warfare. And as a result, the soldiers on both sides did not die in their hundreds, they did not die in their thousands, they did not die in their tens of thousands, or even their hundreds of thousands. They eventually died in their millions. And at the end of all of that, after nearly 37 million casualties, in all theaters, then it came right on top of that, on the very end of it, the Spanish flu, the Spanish influenza, which killed 4 times as many people worldwide as did all of the casualties in the First World War. People would have been, if you could have been a time traveler and gone back to just after the end of the Great War, and if those people knew that you were a time traveler, and they say, so what do you people in the 21st century think of our Great War? And if I would have been there, I would have said, well, we in the 21st century call your Great War by another name. We call it World War I. And they would have been absolutely horrified, because they would realize that a greater, even more destructive war was on the horizon, World War II. So putting in a historical perspective, yes, the Russian-Ukrainian war does in some way echo the first war, what we now call the First World War. However, it has the potential of being brought to a halt and being stopped at that level and not spreading into a world war. Russia does not have the capacity, really, other than by blindly unleashing a nuclear attack, which I have my doubts about its being that effective. They cannot impose a world war upon the rest of civilized humanity. They can, if the West, the NATO nations, and the United States have the political will and determination to do so, they can stop Russia here, stop Russia in Ukraine, force them back, and then consolidate Ukraine with the rest of the NATO alliance. So there is that potential, and I am cautiously optimistic that the incoming Trump administration is realizing what it is facing, and that they cannot simply blithely declare that, oh, we're going to end this in one day. They now know that they cannot. And they may be forced, like former President Jimmy Carter was in 1979, when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. That was when Jimmy Carter's eyes were opened. He finally saw what the real nature of the threat was facing him. And so he boycotted the Moscow Olympics, did the grain embargo on the Soviet Union, and most crucially, initiated the U.S. defense buildup, the great buildup of budgetary military forces, which most people don't give him credit for. But he initiated the monetary defense buildup, and all Ronald Reagan had to do was step on the accelerator when he came into office. It was already underway, just give it another boost.
And to vocalize it, which he did quite effectively.
Oh, yes.
So Russians started to believe and started to fear something that didn't exist yet. It was just a plan to do.
They feared the Strategic Defense Initiative. They feared the potential. They thought it was an actual program. It was merely research and development. But the Russians didn't believe that. They, according to a KGB report that went to Gorbachev in April '85, they thought that they concluded that the U.S. SDI program would eventually be able to block 90% of Soviet missiles in a first strike. And there was no way that the Soviet Union could keep up with this capability. Now, do we actually have that underway? No. But that didn't matter. The Russians believed it. They acted on that belief, and they bankrupted themselves trying to neutralize what was essentially a phantom SDI program.
Yeah, but it goes a little bit deeper than that. I remember in 1988, I met for the first time great chess world champion Garry Kasparov, and he mentioned to me, it was in Greece, in Thessaloniki Chess Olympiad, and he mentioned to me that the USSR at the time still, they fell so much behind in sciences, in computer applications, it's forget about this even Star Wars aspect. It's just everywhere. They were so backwardness, and so it was simple.
The Russians felt that they would, like with the United States, the Russians felt that they were confronting an army of wizards, an army of magicians with magical powers beyond their understanding, and totally unable to cope with it.
Nothing, not much changed actually from this time, because now Russia is using on the battlefield. They've almost depleted all their storages of old Soviet APCs of old Soviet tanks, and they've started to send their soldiers to attack the Ukrainian positions, or by foot, or on Chinese golf cars, or on bikes, or on Vaz Bukhanka. It's the transportation vehicle, a clone of Volkswagen T1 actually, and this was developed by Soviet Union in 1958 year. They're still producing them, and it actually shows the advantages of Russian car industry. They're still producing the car which they've started to produce in 1958. They are proud of it, and nothing changed in this car since that time. It's simple. It's like United States were proud that first cars of Henry Ford were not in museums, but going on the roads of Manhattan.
Well, believe it or not, but on those classic Ford Model T cars and Model A cars, some of them are still on the road. They are because they are classics. They're considered classic cars.
They're classics. They cost enormous money, and in Russia, classic cars are massively sent to the battlefield, and of course they're being destroyed. Dozens of these cars are being destroyed every day, because they have no armor, they have no drone, no defenses against drones. They're just being used to transport as lot of soldiers as possible from one point to another, and being in that car, they are just asking God if no artillery shell or no drone will be on them while they're being transferred. But no, actually, in Kursk there are complete roads of machines. We've wanted to discuss Kursk offensive with you today. I will try to find a video. Actually, I found it and show you another video which we definitely have to watch today to see how all this is looking.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah,
by all means, let's do it.
Give me a couple seconds, and I will download this video for you and show. This actually looks looks unbelievable. This is just a so-called road of death, and I've got this video already. So if Mark will,
Actually, I'm curious when Trump talking about to stop the war in Ukraine. And does that addressed also to Kursk region or not?
He conveniently left a loophole. Okay.
Yeah.
We will see. So, Mark, please play this video for us.
Ну все, с Богом! Господи! Воздух, смотри!
He's actually blessing to the asking God to let him cross this road. It's a video from a Russian soldier.
What a nice highway.
You see the civilian cars here destroyed, but they're not civilian. They're using civilian cars to attack Ukrainian positions and to transfer troops because the armored vehicles they're already
Я полный, полный!
finished. They almost don't have the remaining quantities of armored vehicles. On the right, it was that was Buchanka destroyed.
Назад смотри, в основном!
That was some kind of Chinese
Просто
golf
ебала,
car.
нахуй!
The left was Buchanka.
Блять, сюда! Блять, братуха, сорян! Ебать! Давай, малыха, давай, сука! По-братски, блядь! Не подведи, крошка моя, маленькая! Сука, блядская! Давай, давай, давай! Вот это пизда тут нахуй! Ебать! Бля, братуха, чуть не въебались. Охуеть! Охуеть! Я за 300 был, походу, братуха. Я 300. 300.
And he was injured in the end, saying that his 300 it's a code for being injured.
Wow. It's almost like an expert sort of from the movie excerpt by the name One Way Road to Hell.
I was going to say, yeah, that looks like a journey into the gates of hell. It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, but still, it's very interesting that offensive in Kursk is to continue. And in spite of so many critics that it was unnecessary, it didn't achieve any goals or so on, I don't agree with that. I think
It is achieving a very significant goal. It is
It is, absolutely.
damaging Russian morale beyond repair.
Yeah, and believe it, it's almost 6 months since the beginning of the attack, and Russians cannot do anything. And now they brought Koreans, and I don't know how many more armies they need to bring.
For 4,000 of Koreans of North Koreans was already killed or seriously injured in Kursk, and according to the information from the Ukrainian officials, they and from Ukrainian military, they're just fighting like in the previous century. They are not acquainted with the drones. They're not hiding from the drones. They don't have any electronic warfare to defense against drones, and they're just dying. Thousands of North Koreans are already dying. Of course, they can bring more and more to Russia. They have a great population and a big army, but actually it will not allow them to claim the occupied regions of Kursk quickly if they will just send in those soldiers without any protection, without armored vehicles, because they don't have armored vehicles, just by foot or in those golf cars or by bikes. They will be killed or injured.
Well, their latest war experiences, Korean War of 1953, which happened to be.
And keep in mind, the North Korean army in the Korean War by the 1953, the North Korean army was really a minor player compared to the Chinese Communist Army. The Chinese constituted the vast majority of forces in the Korean War shortly after their intervention in 1951. So even then, whatever experience the North Korean army may have gained, well, they were certainly doing quite well in the initial stages of the war when they managed to drive all the way to U.S. forces and UN forces all the way down to the Pusan perimeter at the very tip of the Korean peninsula. Have that, and after MacArthur's offensive in Incheon, when U.S. forces and UN forces began driving the North Koreans in retreat, their army was in tatters, and they were able to drive all the way up, almost up to the Chinese border. So, whatever experience the North Korean army gained is long since gone. They have no real experience in warfare.
But now, with those who will remain alive, they will claim that they have experience of Ukrainian war, so they will be in greatest.
They may all wind up, if they're lucky, they'll all wind up getting promoted.
Yeah,
in North Korean army,
or possibly in the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you so much for today's program, and I'm looking forward to our next program on Tuesday, same place, same time, and with each day we are closer and closer to Trump's inauguration, and many news right after that. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great weekend, and see you all on Tuesday. Bye-bye, everybody. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.